The day I walked into that building for my very first day at the new job, I thought it would be just another step toward the life I dreamed of. My name is Layla, and like so many others, I was excited but nervous. I wore my best outfit, held my head high, and told myself this was the beginning of something great. But I had no idea I was walking straight into a storm. A storm of prejudice and ignorance I never expected to face so openly. That day, I didn't just start a new job. I stepped into a world where I would be judged, dismissed, and misunderstood because of who I was. I met my boss, Mr. Grant, that morning. From the moment he glanced at me, I could tell something was wrong. His eyes didn't see the woman who had worked hard to get here. Instead, they saw something else, something small and unimportant in his eyes. What he didn't know, though, was the truth that would soon shake everything to its core. The truth that would bring his entire world crashing down, because sometimes, the people who think they have all the power, don't even realize they're about to lose it all. My first real meeting with Mr. Grant, the regional manager, was more chilling than anything I had expected. The moment I stepped into his office, he barely looked at me. When he finally did, it wasn't with a welcome or curiosity, it was a cold, dismissive glare that made me feel small and invisible. I remember standing there, clutching my portfolio, dressed in my best professional clothes, wondering if I'd made a mistake. I had worked hard for my degree, spent years preparing for this moment, but Mr. Grant didn't seem to see any of that. Instead, he acted like I was just another face, maybe even a janitor, not someone who was there to contribute to the company's success. At one point, I overheard him asking the front desk if the new cleaning lady had arrived yet. I wanted to scream, but I held back, telling myself to stay calm. It wasn't just me, either. Over the next few days, I noticed how he treated other minority employees. He barely spoke to them, and when he did, it was with the same cold, disrespectful attitude. Sometimes, I caught him making jokes behind their backs, small comments about their accents, or how some people just don't fit in here. I remember thinking, maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe I was imagining things. After all, everyone deserves a chance, right? So I told myself to keep my head down, stay professional, and work hard. Maybe, just maybe, I could change his mind. But deep down, I felt the warning signs. Something was wrong, and no matter how much I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much darker journey. Those first few weeks on the job were some of the hardest days I've ever faced. I threw myself into the work, staying late to finish projects, helping co-workers whenever I could, and trying my best to prove that I belonged there. But no matter how much effort I put in, Mr. Grant seemed determined to ignore me, or worse, to belittle me whenever he could. I remember one afternoon, I was helping organize some reports when I overheard him speaking to a couple of other managers. At first, I thought it was just a normal conversation, but then I caught the way he pronounced my name, twisting it like it was a joke. He laughed as he told a story about where he thought people like me came from, making rude comments about my background. My heart sank. I felt small, like I didn't belong anywhere in that building. There was one moment that hurt more than the others. It was a Friday, and I had worn a beautiful traditional African print blouse, something my mother had given me to remind me of my roots. I thought it was a way to bring a little pride and color into the office. But when Mr. Grant saw it, he called me into his office and said, "Layla, you need to tone it down. This isn't a cultural festival. Dress like the rest of us, if you want to be taken seriously." I was stunned. I wanted to argue, to tell him that my culture was part of who I was. But I swallowed my pride. I wanted this job, I told myself to push through. Every day I fought to prove my worth, not just to Mr. Grant, but to myself. Because deep down, I believed that hard work and determination would be stronger than ignorance and hate. But what I didn't know was that the worst was still waiting for me, just around the corner. Then came the day everything came crashing down. We were in a team meeting, and I was presenting a report I'd spent hours preparing. Suddenly, Mr. Grant interrupted me. Without any warning, he slammed his hand on the table and said, "This is a mess. How could you let this happen?" I was shocked. I hadn't made a mistake. In fact, the error was someone else's, but Mr. Grant wasn't interested in hearing me out. He kept blaming me. loudly, in front of everyone. I tried to speak up, to explain calmly what really happened, but he cut me off with a sneer. "People like you," he said, staring right at me, "are lucky to even have jobs here." Those words hit me like a punch. The room went silent. My cheeks burned, and tears filled my eyes. I wanted to disappear, to vanish from that humiliating moment. I didn't know how I stayed in that room for the rest of the meeting. After it ended, I gathered my things and walked out without saying a word. Outside, I let the tears fall. I wanted to quit. I wanted to run away from all of it. That night, I called my mother, my only true support. Through my tears, I told her everything, about the meeting, the humiliation, the cruel words. She listened quietly. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Layla, sometimes you have to let people show their true colors. It's painful, but it's better to see who they really are, than to pretend they're something they're not." Her words gave me strength I didn't know I had. I realized this wasn't just about me, it was about standing up to something bigger. The prejudice, the ignorance, it needed to be faced. But even with that strength, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The way Mr. Grant tried to erase me from the company without a second thought. Just a few days after that terrible meeting, I got the call I dreaded. Mr. Grant asked me to come to his office. When I walked in, I could feel the coldness in the air before he even spoke. Without any warning, he told me I was being let go. No explanation, no chance to defend myself. "You're just not a good fit here," he said flatly, like I was nothing more than a problem to get rid of. I was stunned. How could this be? I had done everything right, worked late, stayed professional, kept my head down. I had hoped that hard work would speak louder than his prejudice. But it didn't. I asked him, quietly but firmly, to give me a reason in writing. He smirked and said, "That's not necessary." I didn't argue. I packed my things in silence, each item feeling heavier than the last. I left the office without a word, the weight of injustice crushing me inside. But something inside me shifted in that moment, a quiet fire sparked deep within my soul. It was soft at first, almost like a whisper, but it grew stronger with every breath I took. I was done being silent. Done carrying the weight of unfair treatment on my shoulders alone. Done pretending that the pain and humiliation didn't matter. I didn't have all the answers yet. I didn't know how or when this fight would begin, or what it would cost me. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay quiet any longer, because sometimes, standing up for yourself isn't just about speaking out, it's about reclaiming the power that was taken from you. And in that moment I knew I was ready to take that power back. There was one thing Mr. Grant, and everyone else in that office had no idea about. One secret I had kept hidden the entire time. I am Layla Anderson, daughter of Olivia Anderson, the company's global CEO. My mother, a powerful woman known for her sharp mind and tough decisions, had asked me to join the company anonymously. She wanted me to learn the business from the ground up, without anyone giving me special treatment because of my name. At first it seemed like a good idea. I thought I could prove myself on my own, earn respect honestly. But after what happened with Mr. Grant, after the unfair firing and all the cruelty, I realized I had no choice but to reveal who I really was. So I sat down that night, and wrote a detailed email to Human Resources and the corporate office. I explained everything, the humiliation, the prejudice, the lies. I attached proof of my hard work, and the mistreatment I had suffered. Every detail was there, and then just before I hit send, I added a quiet note, one small line that I knew would change everything. Also CCing Olivia Anderson, my mother. My hands trembled slightly as I clicked that button, sending the email out into the digital world. I sat back and waited, heart racing, breath shallow. The silence that followed was deafening. It felt as if time itself had frozen, like the whole world was holding its breath right alongside me. My heart pounded in my chest, every second stretching out longer than the last. I sat there staring at the screen, waiting for anything to happen. And then, just as I began to wonder if I had made a mistake, the silence broke. Almost immediately, everything began to change. Messages started to come through, phone calls were made, and the atmosphere around me shifted fast and unstoppable. It was the moment when the quiet turned into a storm, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. Within hours, whispers started spreading like wildfire through the building. People I barely knew were stopping me in the halls, eyes wide with surprise and disbelief. The entire company was buzzing with the news. The man who thought he had all the power, the man who had treated me like nothing, was about to face a reckoning he never saw coming. Because when you underestimate someone, especially someone with the truth on their side, you're in for a shock. Not long after I sent that email, my phone rang. It was someone from corporate headquarters. Their voice was full of shock and horror, as they told me they had just read my message. The next day, my mother, Olivia Anderson, showed up at our branch in person. When she walked through those doors, the whole office went silent. Everyone stared, stunned. No one expected the CEO herself to come down here. Mr. Grant tried to keep his usual arrogant smile, pretending like he had no idea what was going on. But my mother didn't give him a chance to lie or make excuses. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, cold as ice, "You treated my daughter like trash. You humiliated her, disrespected her, and let your prejudice poison this workplace." Then she paused, her eyes locking onto his with a quiet but sharp intensity. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Every word she had just said echoed in the silence, sinking deep like a weight no one could ignore. Her voice dropped just enough, steady and calm, but filled with unmistakable authority. "Now let's talk about your future here." Those words weren't just a sentence, they were a verdict, a turning point. The kind of moment that changes everything. I stood just a few feet away, my heart pounding, watching this man, the one who had made my life a living nightmare, suddenly lose every ounce of control and power he had clung to for so long. His smug confidence, the cold smirk, the way he looked down on me and so many others, vanished in an instant. It was like watching a grand illusion crumble right before my eyes. The room fell into a heavy silence, thick enough to almost touch. You could feel it, the weight of truth settling over every single person there, impossible to ignore. It was like the air itself held its breath. Then, without a single word, security stepped forward. Their footsteps were quiet but purposeful, cutting through the silence like a sharp blade. I kept my eyes fixed on him, watching every move. He didn't even try to fight it, no angry protests, no desperate excuses. His face, which once held nothing but arrogance and control, drained of all color. I saw something new in his eyes, fear, shame, a rawness I had never seen before. In that moment I realized just how fragile his power really was, and for the first time I felt peace knowing that the man who tried to break me was finally broken himself. I saw him being escorted out of the building, no longer the untouchable boss people whispered about, but just a man stripped of the mask he wore for so long. In that moment, I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from revenge, but from justice finally being served. In that moment, standing there and watching everything unfold, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time, relief. A deep, overwhelming relief that justice was finally being served. Like a heavy dark cloud that had been hovering over me for months was slowly starting to break apart, letting in a ray of light. It was as if all the pain, the humiliation, and the silent battles I had fought alone were finally recognized. And for the first time I believed that things could actually change. I knew right then and there, that from this day forward, nothing in my life or in that company would ever be the same. After everything that had happened, I was called back to the office. But this time it wasn't just to return to my old position. No, this time it was different. I was being reinstated with a promotion, a real chance to step into a role where I could make a difference. The company didn't stop there. They announced a brand new initiative, diversity and ethics training across every single branch. They promised a fresh start, a real commitment to building a workplace where respect and inclusion were not just words, but the foundation for everyone's future. It felt like the beginning of something new, something hopeful, and I was ready to be a part of it. and they offered me a leadership role to help build a workplace where respect and inclusion weren't just words, but the foundation of every decision. I accepted the role, not because I wanted to get back at anyone, but because I believed in something bigger than myself. I wanted real change, the kind that lasts and reaches every corner of the company, because honestly, no one should ever have to go through what I went through, the pain, the humiliation, the feeling of being invisible just because of who I am. I wanted to make sure that every single person who walked through those doors, no matter their race, background, or story, would feel seen, respected, and safe, that no one would have to hide their true selves, or live in fear of being judged or pushed aside. This new chapter wasn't just mine to write. It belonged to everyone who had ever been silenced, overlooked, or made to feel small. It was for those voices waiting to be heard, for those dreams waiting to be believed in, and I was ready to stand up, to lead, and to make sure that the future would be different. Because this time we were going to build something better. Together. Looking back, I realize how painful the whole experience was. But it also uncovered something deeper. The hidden rot beneath the surface of the company, the prejudice and fear that no one wanted to admit. Sometimes, life asks us to stay quiet, to keep our heads down and hope the storm will pass. Maybe it feels easier that way, silent, invisible, just going through the motions. But there comes a moment when silence isn't safe anymore. When you realize that staying quiet only lets injustice grow louder, that's when you have to find your voice. Not a small whisper, but a voice strong enough to shake the walls, to make the world listen. It's terrifying, I won't lie. Your hands might tremble. Your heart might pound like never before. Doubts flood in. Am I strong enough? Will anyone hear me? But here's the truth, if you don't speak up, nothing changes. The hurt stays hidden. The wrongs keep happening. Your silence becomes part of the problem. So if you're feeling small, unseen, or unheard, please remember this, your voice matters. It matters more than you realize. Even when it's scary. Even when the world feels like it's against you. Stand tall, even if your knees shake. Speak out, even if your words come out shaky. Because your truth, your courage, can change everything. And sometimes, that one brave voice is all it takes to start a ripple that turns into a wave. If this story touched you, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Sharing it with someone who needs to hear it can make a real difference. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life, stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all of the strength we carry inside. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to share the next story with you.